Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Karen Brady in the House.
New word in our name. And, Mr Speaker, I am here to give an update on the proposed merger between 21st Century Fox and Sky plc and my decision whether or not to refer the transaction for a full 6-month investigation by the Competition and Markets Authority, the CMA. I should first remind the House that in my quasi-judicial role I must 1. Come to a decision on the basis of relevant evidence, 2. Act independently in a process that is fair and impartial, and 3. Take my decision as promptly as is reasonably practicable. I am committed to transparency and openness in this process and have been clear my decisions can only be influenced by the facts, not opinions, and by the evidence, not who shouts the loudest. Turning first to the question of media plurality, I can confirm that none of the representations received have persuaded me to change my position. Accordingly, I can confirm my intention to make a referral on the media plurality ground to the CMA. Turning now to commitment on broadcasting standards, over the summer my officials reviewed the almost 43,000 representations received. A significant majority of these were campaign-inspired, arguing against the merger going ahead, but generally without providing new or further evidence or commenting on Ofcom's approach. Overall, only 30 of the 43,000 representations were substantive, raising potentially new evidence or commenting on Ofcom's approach. Almost all were related to the question of commitment to broadcasting standards. In light of these representations, I asked Ofcom to provide further advice, and can I put on record my gratitude for Ofcom's efforts in responding to the questions raised. I am today publishing the exchanges between my department and Ofcom. In these exchanges, I sought clarification on 1. The threshold Ofcom applied to its consideration of the commitment to broadcasting standards ground, 2. The consideration made of broadcasting compliance, and 3. The consideration made of corporate governance issues. I also asked Ofcom to consider whether any of the new substantive representations I received affected its assessment. I have taken careful account of all relevant representations and Ofcom's advice, and have today, as required by the legislation, written to the parties to inform them that I am now minded to refer the merger to the CMA on the grounds of genuine commitment to broadcasting standards. I will now set out the technical reasons for this decision. Questions were raised about the threshold for referral. The legal threshold for a reference to the CMA is low. I have the power to make a reference if I believe there is a risk, which is not purely fanciful, that the merger might operate against the specified public interests. In its original report, Ofcom stated that we consider that there are no broadcasting standards concerns that may justify a reference. At the time, Ofcom appeared to be unequivocal. Following the additional representations, Ofcom has further clarified that while we consider there are non-fanciful concerns, we do not consider that these are such as may justify a reference in relation to the broadcast standards public interest consideration. The existence of non-fanciful concerns means that, as a matter of law, the threshold for a reference on the broadcasting standards grounds is met. In light of all representations and Ofcom's additional advice, I believe these are sufficient to warrant the exercise of my discretion to refer. The first concern was raised in Ofcom's public interest report, that Fox did not have adequate compliance procedures in place for the broadcast of Fox News in the UK and only took action to improve its approach to compliance after Ofcom expressed concerns. Ofcom has now confirmed it considers this to raise non-fanciful concerns, but which are not sufficiently serious to warrant referral. I consider that these non-fanciful concerns do warrant further consideration. The fact that Fox belatedly established such procedures does not ease my concerns, nor does Fox's compliance history. Ofcom was reassured by the existence of the compliance regime, which provides licensees with an incentive to comply. However, it is clear to me that Parliament intended the scrutiny of whether an acquiring party has a genuine commitment to attaining broadcasting standards objectives to happen before a merger takes place. Third parties also raised concerns about what they termed the Foxification of Fox-owned news outlets internationally. On the evidence before me, I am not able to conclude that this raises non-fanciful concerns. However, I consider it important that entities which adopt controversial or partisan approaches to news and current affairs in other jurisdictions should, at the same time, have a genuine commitment to broadcasting standards here. These are the matters the CMA may wish to consider in the event of a referral. Turning to the question of corporate governance failures, Ofcom states in its latest correspondence that these raise non-fanciful concerns in relation to the broadcasting standards ground. However, it again concludes that these concerns do not warrant a reference. I agree that corporate governance issues at Fox raise non-fanciful concerns, but in my view, it would be appropriate for these concerns to be considered further by the CMA. I agree with the view that, in this context, my proper concern is whether Fox will have a genuine commitment to attaining broadcasting standard objectives. However, I am not confident that weaknesses in Fox's corporate governance arrangements are incapable of affecting compliance in the broadcasting standards context. I have outstanding non-fanciful concerns about these matters, and I am of the view that they should be considered further by the CMA. Before I come to a final decision, I am required under the Enterprise Act 2002 to allow the parties to make representations on my proposed decision. And this is the reason my decision at this stage remains a minded 2-1. I have given the parties 10 working days to respond. Following receipt of any representations from the party, I will aim to come to my final decision in relation to both grounds as promptly as I can. I would remind the House that should I decide to refer on one or both grounds, the merger will be subject to a full and detailed investigation by the CMA over a 6-month period. Such a referral does not signal the outcome of that investigation. Given the quasi-judicial nature of this matter, my decision cannot be guided by the parliamentary timetable. If I come to my decision during recess, I will write, as I have previously, and return to this House at the earliest possible opportunity to provide an update. And I commend this statement to the House.
Tom Watson.
I thank the Secretary of State for advance sight of her statement. Mr. Speaker, the Secretary of State has taken her responsibilities seriously, and I give her credit for that. I give her credit submitted after she had announced her initial decision, and for changing her mind. I would also like to praise the Honourable Member for Doncaster North, who has run a very effective campaign on this area. Dare I say, Mr. Speaker, I think he leads the race for Backbencher of the Year for his campaign. I also welcome the Secretary of State's decision, or should I say the fact that she says she is minded to make that decision to refer the bid on broadcasting standards grounds as well on media plurality grounds. I think it's the first time a minister in the current government has ever stood in the way of what the Murdochs want, and frankly, not before time. Yeah. So well done. And as they say in the Black Country, she's a good un. She's done everything we asked her to do. Or almost everything, Mr. Speaker. Her statement does, however, reflect, in my view, a failure on the part of Ofcom. In their first report, as she says, Ofcom said that there were no broadcasting standards concerns that may justify a reference. They've now admitted that there are, as she says, non-fanciful concerns, and on that basis she had to refer the bid, and she has done so. It should have been obvious to Ofcom. It certainly was to everyone on this side of the House that concerns about the Murdochs were more than fanciful. After all, it's the Murdochs that have a long history of regulatory non-compliance and of corporate governance failure. Just last week, Fox itself recognised its own failure to comply with broadcasting standards when it pulled Fox News, which has breached Ofcom's rules again and again from the UK. And Ofcom could have gone further too on the fit and proper test. It decided that a post-merger Sky would pass despite clear evidence of impropriety and failure of corporate governance both at 21st Century Fox and at News Corporation. Those failures include the phone hacking scandal, which still has loose ends that are yet to be tied up. Just last week, News Group settled with 17 cases related to allegations of criminality at the Sun newspaper, ensuring that James Murdoch will not have to appear in court later in the year. Now, those 17 cases are just the first tranche of 91 new claims of phone hacking and illegality and obtaining information against the Sun and News of the World. This story is far from over, even if you'll read little about it in the pages of Murdoch's newspapers. And all of these cases are claims against a company that claimed for over a decade that there was no problem and tried to move heaven and earth to prevent abuses being uncovered. This is alongside the ongoing sexual and racial harassment scandal at Fox News, part of 21st Century Fox's empire. So, as I said, Mr. Speaker, the Secretary of State has done almost everything we asked her to do. The one thing we still want to see, and we've said it time and time again, is that we need to get properly to the bottom of the scandals at the Murdoch empire, part of the Leveson II inquiry. She's shot her fox with the Murdochs now. She's burnt her boats. They already don't like her. I know what that's like. But it liberates her. So go on, Secretary of State. Do the right thing. Go ahead with Leveson II.
Yeah. Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know, damned with fate praise, maybe. I'm a little unsure as to... I don't know I'll ever get such good across the dispatch box from the honourable gentleman, but I do want to repeat the point that I made in my statement. I have made this decision on the basis of the evidence. I take the quasi-judicial role very, very seriously, and I have looked at the evidence before me. I have considered the response of Ofcom made to the further evidence that we put to them, and that is why I have made this announcement today. I would also remind him that the fit and proper duty that he referred to is a duty for the independent regulator. It is a responsibility of Ofcom. It is an ongoing duty. It does not end at any point. It is there for Ofcom to continue looking at for any holder of a broadcasting licence. On the matter of Leveson, I will come to this House with the responses to the consultation that we carried out on Leveson shortly. He will perhaps understand that this summer has been slightly busy, reviewing significant amounts of evidence. But I also would ask him if he will join me in condemning the work of the campaign that has been run by some very very left-wing activists, people who have spent the summer walking around my constituency wearing my face mask with big electronic A-boards that they not only pursued me round town with, but they actually went and found my family who live outside my constituency and went and protested there. I am taking this decision on the basis of evidence, not on the basis of any campaign, intimidation or harassment, and I hope he will join me in condemning those activities.
I don't think there's a procedure for... We don't normally take points of order in the middle of statements, but I'm in a generous mood, and I'll hear the honourable gentleman if he's characteristically brief.
I will, sir. I'm very sorry to hear the allegations the Secretary of State has made, and I promise her I will go away and look at the evidence. If there are Labour Party members involved in this, we will deal with them. Please let me just say to her that I've been as sickened as she has with the way that our colleagues in this House have been targeted for doing their jobs. And it is a load that is carried, a heavier load that is carried by our female colleagues. So let me make it clear. You can either be a misogynist or you can be a member of the Labour Party, but you can't be both. And if she gives me the evidence, we'll deal with it.
Briefly, yes.
Just respond and say thank the honourable gentleman for that. I think we are at one on that particular point, and we would like to work cross-party on these matters.
Thank you. Damien Collins.
Speaker, I'd like to thank the Secretary of State for her statement and also for agreeing to appear in front of the Select Committee the first week back after the conference recess, where we'll have the chance to question her further on this. I'd like to ask, though, whether, I would hope that she would agree that actually, I think this is the process working. It is right that these questions about broadcasting standards, licence holders, fit and proper persons are taken by the appropriate independent regulatory body, and it shouldn't be for politicians to exercise discretion about who they think should or shouldn't hold licences, but it should be for official guidance from the regulator.
Secretary of State.
I thank my honourable friend and congratulate him, if I've not had the chance to do so before in this House, on his return as Chair of the Select Committee. I look forward to being interrogated by him at length, I'm sure, in the next few weeks. But he is right. This is a process set down in the Enterprise Act. This is a process that Parliament voted for. This is what Parliament has asked me as the Secretary of State to do. I have taken that very seriously, and I will continue to make sure I act scrupulously fairly in that matter.
Brendan O'Hara.
Speaker, I thank the Secretary of State for prior sight of her statement. She acknowledges rightly that there is growing public concern about the concentration of media ownership in fewer hands. Concerns that we on these benches share absolutely. It's essential there is a plurality of voice within the media across the UK for the maintenance of diversity and standards. Before recess, we on these benches absolutely welcomed the fact that she was minded to refer this to the CMA, and we are delighted that she has now confirmed that is her position so to do. And we welcome the fact that she is also now minded.
It rather looks as if more of this £18 billion proposed takeover by Fox of Sky will be referred to the Competition and Markets Authority. That's a development on how things looked 2 months ago. Let's turn to our business presenter Ian King in our city studio. Ian.
Well, Colin, what the Secretary of State said at the moment is that she's still minded to refer. So this doesn't actually yet trigger a full referral of this takeover bid to the CMA, but Karen Bradley saying there she is minded to. Now, what has changed, what is quite interesting, is that you may recall there are two grounds on which, under the Enterprise Act, the Secretary of State can refer a takeover bid to. One is on the media plurality issue, and the other is on public interest over broadcasting standards. Now, originally, when Ofcom reported back to Karen Bradley over 21st Century Fox's takeover approach for Sky, the owner of Sky News, Ofcom said that there were issues with plurality, but it was quite satisfied that Fox would meet all the requirements on broadcasting standards. Now, Karen Bradley, as she said in her statement to the Commons there, was unsatisfied with this following recent developments, recent bits of news that have come out in the United States about things that have gone on at Fox News, which is one of the main media assets of 21st Century Fox. She was going back to Ofcom. She was bouncing it back to Ofcom for further deliberation. Now, what we got today is that essentially Ofcom is pretty much sticking to what it said earlier. It said that there were some concerns on broadcasting standards, but these were non-fanciful. That's the new piece of jargon that Karen Bradley was using quite a lot today. And Karen Bradley, and this is the key point in her statement here, Colin, she said, the existence of non-fanciful concerns means that as a matter of law, the threshold for reference on the broadcasting standards ground is met. Now, you might recall Karen Bradley had already said she was minded to refer this takeover bid to Ofcom on the grounds of plurality, even though 21st Century Fox and Sky plc had come up with their own measures, remedies in the jargon that would obviate those concerns. But Karen Bradley still said she was minded to refer it to the CMA. Now, I can show you the Sky share price. During Karen Bradley's speech there, you can see it's off some 2.75% now. It was off as much as 5% earlier on, £9.25p a share there. Worth reminding everyone, Colin, that the offer price of 21st Century Fox's offer for the remaining shares in Sky that it doesn't already own is £10.75p a share. So the share is now trading at a significant discount to the offer price, rather suggesting that there is an element of scepticism among some investors that this deal will ever go through. Now, what happens next, you ask? Well, in the two parties, 21st Century Fox and Sky, now have 10 days in which to come up with further observations, responses to the Secretary of State's statement today. At some point after that, presumably she will go ahead, in the absence of any new remedies, to refer this offer to the Competition and Markets Authority. At that point, the CMA will have some 6 months in which to come up with its deliberations. Now, this is belt and braces stuff from Karen Bradley. She is sticking clearly to the law. She was at pains to make that clear during her statement. This is a quasi-judicial decision, and as such, she is sticking very much to the law. It's a complete headache for 21st Century Fox, by the way, because the deal is now very unlikely to complete much before June this year, assuming the CMA gives it the go-ahead at all. And that means that it will probably have to pay a break fee to Sky PLC, and also Sky itself will be paying out a special dividend to shareholders on the assumption that the deal won't complete before the end of this year, which we don't think it will now.
OK, Ian, thanks very much indeed.
Rupert Murdoch's £11 billion bid to take full control of Sky has been dealt a blow today after the government said it would ask the competition watchdog to look into the planned takeover by 21st Century Fox. The Culture Secretary, Karen Bradley, said she made the decision over concerns about how a merger would boost Mr Murdoch's media influence. She also asked the watchdog to look into the issue of broadcasting standards at his 21st Century Fox group and particularly at Fox News. Our business editor, Siobhan Kennedy, has this report.
Campaigners were expecting the government to roll over to Rupert Murdoch to edge him closer on his way to securing the whole of Sky and combining it with his Fox empire in the US. But as they listened to the Culture Secretary Karen Bradley today, they got an unexpected surprise. For rather than going easy on the Murdochs, Mrs Bradley instead turned the screw.
I have taken careful account of all relevant representations and Ofcom's advice, and have today, as required by the legislation, written to the parties to inform them that I am now minded to refer the merger to the CMA on the grounds of genuine commitment to broadcasting standards.
She's referring to the Competition and Markets Authority, which will now conduct a 6-month review. Loosely translated, things just got a lot more tricky for Rupert Murdoch. We already knew the Culture Secretary was likely to refer 21st Century Fox's takeover of Sky on competition grounds, and she confirmed that today. But unexpectedly, she also said she was minded to refer them on grounds of its commitment to broadcasting standards here in the UK. That's based on her concerns about the way Fox handled a string of sexual and racial harassment allegations and accusations of false news reporting in the US, as well as concerns about past phone hacking by a Murdoch newspaper here. At the centre of the Fox crisis, Roger Ailes, the former chairman of Fox News, who died this year.
Caution, you are about to enter the no-spin zone.
And Bill O'Reilly, its former star anchor. Both faced a string of sexual harassment allegations by at least a dozen former Fox employees, which they denied. And then over the summer, a fresh and damaging allegation of false reporting by Fox News after it claimed a Democratic Party employee was behind the leaking of sensitive emails in the run-up to the US presidential election.
And 12 days after he was killed, it shows up on WikiLeaks.
A claim the channel then discussed extensively live on air before later retracting the story, just as the parent company's bid for Sky was sitting on the regulator's table. Back in the House today, anti-Murdoch MPs couldn't contain their excitement.
I think it's the first time a minister in the current government has ever stood in the way of what the Murdochs want, and frankly, not before time. Yeah. So well done. And as they say in the Black Country, she's a good 'un.
Fox said today it was disappointed and surprised the Culture Secretary had ignored the advice of the UK's media regulator Ofcom and referred it to the authorities. But it said it still hoped the deal would close by June of next year.
Siobhan Kennedy reporting there. Sexual harassment, firings, multi-million-pound payouts. The stories coming out of Fox headquarters have seemed as sensational as the headlines that sometimes dominate their news channels. The company's undergone a large-scale overhaul of its management structure, but there are some who are clearly still nervous about the company's soul. One of those, it seems, our own government. Today, the Culture Secretary said she was likely to refer Rupert Murdoch's £12 billion bid to take full control of Sky to the competition regulator, pointing, among other things, to weaknesses in Fox's corporate governance arrangements. So does the Culture Secretary fear the Fox culture will end up here?
There's got to be some downside to having a woman president, right? Something. And my question is, when she looks in the mirror, Doesn't she want to crawl out of her own skin? When you're president of the United States, you got to deal with people like Putin, Kate. You got to deal with real ornery, the mullahs in Iran. Look, the mullahs in Iran, they think women are like subspecies. All right. So
no, I used to think women just shouldn't be able to vote. Now I think at least liberal women should not be able to hold office.
A taste there of Fox News. Well, I'm joined from New York by Douglas Wigdor, a lawyer who represents dozens of clients who've taken lawsuits against Fox. And with me here is Paul Connew, a former newspaper executive who was deputy editor of Murdoch's now closed News of the World. Very nice to have you both. Douglas, you think that was the right decision?
I do think it was the first step in the right direction because there's still a lot more investigation that needs to be done. Look, I refer to 21st Century Fox as 19th Century Fox because I represent over 20 former and current employees in all sorts of sexual harassment, retaliation, race discrimination claims. And the fact of the matter is that there's a lot that the British government doesn't know because so many people are bound by gag orders and confidentiality orders that the government really should ask 21st Century Fox to let people speak, to speak freely so they can make an informed decision as to whether they meet the broadcasting standards that the British people deserve.
OK. Paul, tell Douglas why he's wrong.
Well, I'm not here as a cheerleader for Rupert Murdoch. I'm a media commentator who's often been critical of the Murdoch empire. I've worked for it and against it. But I'm going to be very careful here. What's happened in America, which I agree, is pretty scandalous and disturbing, but does it have to translate to the UK situation? Sky News, an award-winning channel. I'm one of the judges of the RTS Awards, and like the BBC, Sky produces some tremendous journalism. And as far as I can see, and as far as Ofcom seem to agree, there was not any evidence of undue pressure there or the sort of issues in the UK
I guess that's
that surround the US
Douglas,
operation.
Do you think that Sky can't defend itself?
Well, I mean, the decision that Ofcom originally made was before we filed a lawsuit on behalf of Rod Wheeler.
But they were aware of the, unless they didn't view it with the international media,
it involved
they were
a very
aware.
complicated. It involved a very complicated set of facts, but the bottom line was that Fox News was creating fake news. And what you really have is you have the Murdoch empire from top to bottom. This isn't just Fox News. This is also the New York Post. This is everything that the Murdochs touch. They, in your opening remarks and before I came on, you said that Fox has claimed there's been a complete overhaul. There has not been a complete overhaul. Bill O'Reilly, Roger Ailes left with $60 million. They continue to try and fight the real victims of these cases. The head of the legal department of Fox News is still there.
Paul,
the head of the
because we have a regulatory system here where the Foxification of Sky News in the UK, could not happen. I think it's quite correct that the government, and I'm sure Karen Bradley ran this by Theresa May, I think because of the political sensitivity surrounding this, because we have a minority Tory government, and because either side on this one, when the CMA report back in 6 months' time, whichever way they recommend, it's going to be almost certainly legally challenged by one side or the other. So it's probably a wise move by the government to take this step. But you can't automatically say because of what's happened in the States is going to govern what happens in the UK.
Digod.
Well, I mean, it's wise to do an investigation because they need a full set of facts. I mean, this isn't the first time the Murdochs have been in the news in the United Kingdom. I mean,
of course not.
Millie Dowler is still fresh on people's minds in 2011 when an investigation ensued. And I think there's going to be a lot more. I suspect that in the coming days, we're going to see more news about the Murdochs and Fox News and how they control it and what's still going on at Fox News. And I think that the CMA really should take a close, hard look at it. There's no reason to believe, frankly, that they're going to operate Sky any differently than they've operated every other entity.
What would we miss, then, if this deal doesn't go ahead?
I think the media landscape in this country would not benefit from purely having the excellent BBC and ITN News. I think the loss of Fox News News. I can't see anyone else. If the Murdochs pulled out, for example...
You said the loss of Fox News.
Oh, sorry, the loss of Sky. I'm sorry.
Is that Freudian?
Yeah,
Do
Freudian.
you think it becomes Fox News?
Fox News could not be replicated on Sky. So I think that the British media news landscape would suffer if Sky News disappeared. I can't see anybody else taking it on and investing in it. It's a loss maker in its own right. It's propped up, obviously, by the other commercial interests of the Sky business.
We've nearly run out.
I mean, I don't see what... Well, I just don't see why you reach that conclusion that they wouldn't operate Sky the way they operate Fox, which is to create divisiveness. You know, personally, I've received death threats because of this divisiveness that they create, and that's what you need to be really concerned about.
All right. Thank you both very much. Thank you.